Then I started seeing it everywhere, and I just became the biggest Luka fan. She just hit me instantly. Did you just hit me? You ever get that feeling when something just hits you instantly? I'm like, that's the best player. Who do you think won the trade, as of right now, currently as it stands? Today you lace them up, you go out there, and play tomorrow, it's Dallas. That's a made team. If this were Mark Cuban still owning the majority stake in the Dallas Mavericks, that wouldn't happen. There is no way that Luka Doncic would be out of Dallas, but because he's no longer the majority owner, and that belongs in the hands of the Adelson family, they weren't having it. Now you start to say to yourself, 25-year-old superstar, they get rid of him in the middle of the night without telling his representation or telling him something else is going on. And what I love about the internet is you hear all the conspiracy theories, so let me address one. Conspiracy theory that I was a part of. He's out of shape. The NBA trade deadline always delivers its fair share of drama, but will the 2025 season go down in history? It felt like something straight out of a Hollywood script just when things seemed quiet. Boom. The basketball world got flipped upside down. Luka Doncic was traded. Luka Doncic, the lifeline of the Dallas Mavericks. A generational talent with the kind of skill, vision, and pure basketball genius that makes him impossible to replace. The guy who turned the Mavericks into a team you had to watch, and then, out of nowhere, he's gone. The shock was immediate. Players, analysts, and fans were left scrambling, trying to make sense of what just happened. How does a franchise even consider moving a player like this? Was there internal conflict? A secret rift between Luka and the front office? Did the Mavs see something we didn't? And then came the conspiracy theories. Regardless of what's true, one thing is certain. The NBA will never be the same after this move, and of course the biggest names in basketball had plenty to say, from NBA legends who understand what it means to carry a franchise to media personalities who thrive on these blockbuster moments. Everyone had an opinion. Today we're breaking it all down to reactions, the fallout, and what this means for Luka, his new team, and the league moving forward. Buckle up. If you like the video, then like the video and subscribe to the channel. This one's going to be a wild ride. First up, we've got the big diesel himself, Shaquille O'Neal. One of the most dominant forces the NBA has ever seen. And now an analyst who doesn't hold back when it comes to Luka's trade. Shaq had some thoughts, and let's just say he wasn't exactly impressed with how the Mavericks handled things. In a recent segment, Shaq called out Dallas for the way they blindsided their franchise superstar. Well, obviously Dallas didn't want to move forward with one of the greatest young players that we've seen today. I wish the business of basketball could have been handled a little better. You would think a guy that 5 years in the league, 5 first team All-NBA would at least get the conversation like, hey, things are not going well. This could possibly happen. Shaq's point is loud and clear. This isn't just some role player we're talking about. This is Luka Doncic, a generational talent, a guy you build a franchise around, not casually ship off like an expiring contract. And yet Luka wasn't even given a real heads up. That's not just bad management, that's a full-on trust breakdown between player and organization. But here's where Shaq's take gets even more interesting. Despite ripping the Mavs for their handling of the situation, he actually thinks they might have come out ahead. However, I think Dallas won the trade for the next 2 years anyway. Wait, what? How does that even make sense? Losing a player like Luka is on paper a disaster for any franchise, but Shaq seems to believe that Anthony Davis paired with Kyrie Irving could make them competitive in the short term. The real question is, can they truly replace Luka's impact? Can you take away one of the most skilled offensive weapons in the league and somehow get better? Or is this just Shaq trying to find a silver lining in a move that left the NBA world in complete shock? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, this trade isn't just about who won the next 2 seasons, it's about who set themselves up for long-term success. Next up, we have Jason Gallagher, an NBA analyst who wasted no time roasting the Mavericks front office for what he sees as a textbook case of trying to be too smart for their own good. In a tweet that quickly made the rounds, Gallagher pulled no punches. Nico, you've reached idiocracy. Do you know that term? It's where you think you've gotten so smart that you've actually kind of circled around, and now you're actually like, that's the word. It's not idiocy, it's idiocracy. You've overthought this one a little bit. You did not zag while everyone was zigging. The Mavericks front office thought they were playing 4D chess, but they actually just flipped The board over and knocked all the pieces onto the floor. Gallagher's reference to Idiocracy is a direct shot at GM Nico Harrison, suggesting that in trying to be the smartest guy in the room, he may have just outsmarted himself, and that last line, "you did not zag," while everyone was zigging, is his way of saying the Mavs thought they were making a bold, unconventional move. But instead they may have just made one of the most baffling decisions in NBA history. And let's be real, Gallagher's not alone in this opinion. From fans to analysts to former players, the overwhelming reaction to Luka's trade has been disbelief. The frustration isn't just about losing a superstar, it's about how poorly the Mavs seem to have handled it. But if you thought that take was harsh, wait until you hear what the No Dunks podcast had to say. If you're looking for brutal honesty with a side of comedy, the No Dunks podcast never disappoints. When the Luka trade news broke, the crew wasted no time ripping into Dallas's logic, if you can even call it that. One of the hosts summed it up perfectly. It's like the Mavs read Twitter and said, "Oh, people don't like Luka's conditioning, and they don't like his defense. Throw that out there as a reason that we traded him. There's no possible good reason to trade Luka Doncic. He can weigh 350 pounds and still be the best player on the court." Yes, Luka's conditioning has been a talking point. Yes, his defense has been questionable at times, but acting like those are reasons to trade away one of the most gifted offensive players of this generation, that's like selling your Ferrari because you don't like the cup holders. It almost feels like the Mavs were scrambling for any excuse to justify the move. Because let's be real, no matter how they try to spin it, fans and analysts alike are left asking the same question: what was the real motivation behind this trade? And right now nobody seems to have a good answer. Kevin has always been a fiery competitor, but when it comes to analyzing the NBA, he also has a knack for seeing things others might miss. And in the case of the Luka Doncic trade, KG thinks there's more going on than meets the eye. In an episode of KG Certified, Garnett dropped a take that had conspiracy theorists eating it up. "Oh, this is Nike. All these guys are Nike guys. People don't know Nico is an ex-Nike guy. Kobe, this is Kobe Certified right here. Nico is a Kobe guy. He might not even be a Nike guy, he a Kobe guy, so whatever Kobe's timeouts, that's what Nico was on. The Lakers, no Kobe. The Lakers, no Nico. Very well, you hear me very well. So I start just connecting all the dots. Luka, Jordan guy, Anthony Davis, Nike guy, long-standing relationships may have had a role in this trade. Luka is a Jordan brand athlete. The Lakers, Anthony Davis is a Nike guy. Mavericks GM Nico Harrison, deep Nike connections, especially with Kobe Bryant's camp. Could all of this really have played a part in the deal? On the surface, it sounds wild. But NBA trades aren't always just about basketball relationships. Business deals and brand influence often do play a role in where players end up, and let's be honest, whenever the Lakers are involved in a blockbuster trade, people start digging for hidden agendas. Whether KG is onto something or just seeing patterns where there aren't any one things for. Sure, this trade is already loaded with enough drama, and this theory just adds another layer to the madness. If you followed the NBA for any length of time, you know Brian Windhorst doesn't throw around shock and disbelief lightly. He's been covering the league for decades, has seen everything, and still this trade had him absolutely stunned. When discussing the move, Brian could barely believe what he was saying. "I've never seen anything like this. Luka is 25 years old, okay, he is under contract for several more years, and this summer he is already eligible for a Supermax. I find it completely unbelievable that he would not sign that contract. The Mavericks didn't think that going forward with Luka was best for their franchise." Think about that statement. Just take a second to absorb that last part. Dallas didn't think going forward why Luka was best for their franchise. This is a 25-year-old generational talent, already one of the best players in the league, who is in position to sign a Supermax extension and commit to the Mavs for years to come. And yet, instead of locking him down as their franchise player for the next decade, they traded him away. If that doesn't sound insane, I don't know what is. Brian's reaction perfectly captures just how unprecedented this move is. Luka wasn't some disgruntled superstar on an expiring deal. He wasn't forcing his way out. The Mavericks, for whatever reason, decided they couldn't build a winner around him. And instead of trying to fix their roster, they hit the reset button. What does that say about their confidence in the team they built? What does it say about Luka's relationship with the organization behind the scenes, and most importantly, will they regret this decision for years to come? Because right now it sure feels like they just made a franchise-altering mistake. If there's one person who always has the inside scoop on blockbuster NBA moves, it's Shams. The man lives for breaking news, and yet even he was left speechless by how this trade went down. In a recent interview, Shams laid out just how blindsided everyone was by the deal. This deal materialized in the shadows. This came out of nowhere. This is maybe the most stunning trade definitely that I've been a part of in recent NBA history, as far as it was never clearly out there. And I'm told Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, the players, coaches, a lot of people on both sides with the Mavericks and Lakers had no idea. I can assuredly tell you, it's a fact. LeBron James had no idea this was coming. Listen to that again. Even LeBron James, one of the most influential players in league history, had no clue this was happening. No leaks, no cryptic tweets. The deal just happened. That level of secrecy is almost unheard of in today's NBA. Usually we get weeks, sometimes months of speculation before a major trade actually goes through. Rumors fly, agents drop hints, reporters dig up inside information. But this was like waking up to find out the sun had suddenly turned blue. The fact that this trade blindsided not just fans but actual players and coaches speaks to how tightly the Mavericks and Lakers kept their negotiations under wraps. Whether you believe this was pure strategic genius or an absolute disaster in the making, one thing is clear. This wasn't just another trade, this was a seismic shift that shook the NBA to its core. And just when you thought reactions couldn't get any crazier, Kenny Beecham entered the chat. Kenny Beecham is one of the most passionate and knowledgeable sports content creators in the game, and when he saw the news of the Luka Doncic trade, his reaction was about as raw and unfiltered as it gets. In a video reacting to the news, Kenny could not believe what he was seeing. Quite literally, the craziest trade in NBA history just went down. The CRA. I still can't believe that. It is true. I still cannot believe that this is the reality that we are living in right now, where the Dallas Mavericks have Luka goddamn Doncic, and they traded for Anthony Davis. This isn't just a big trade, it's a franchise-altering, league-shaking, history-defining move that will be talked about for decades because, let's be real, Luka Doncic isn't just another superstar. He's the kind of player that teams dream about, having a generational talent who can single-handedly carry an offense, make the impossible look routine, and put up video game numbers on a nightly basis. And the Mavericks traded that. Kenny's disbelief perfectly mirrors how most NBA fans feel. Luka, the player Dallas was supposed to build their future around, is suddenly gone, and while Anthony Davis is obviously an elite player, there's no ignoring the risk factor. AD's health has been a constant concern, and Luka, despite any criticisms about his conditioning or defense, has been nothing short of unstoppable since entering the league. So now the debate begins. Was this a moment of brilliance from the Mavericks, a move that will set them up for success in ways we don't yet understand? Or was this one of the most catastrophic mistakes in recent NBA history? No matter how much analysts and insiders break down trades, there's one group of people who feel the impact in a way stats and contracts can't quantify: the fans. And when it comes to Luka Doncic leaving Dallas, Mavericks fans are absolutely devastated. One lifelong Mavs supporter didn't hold back, pouring their emotions out in a social media post that quickly went viral. I've been a Mavericks fan my whole entire life, since I've been a baby. This is the worst moment in the history of my life. This is ridiculous. This is crazy, man. You went to the NBA Finals. Why are we trading the best player, the franchise player? How are we trading the franchise player? You went to the NBA Finals. He's supposed to have a statue. He's supposed to have a statue. That's the level of impact Luka had on this franchise, to this fan and countless others. Luka wasn't just a player. He was the player, the guy who was supposed to lead them to another championship after Dirk, the one whose jersey kids would wear for the next 2 decades. The one they fully expected to see immortalized in bronze outside the arena someday. It's not just about losing a superstar, it's about losing the future. Fans spent years believing that Luka was the foundation of the next great Mavericks era, only to have that vision ripped away in an instant. And let's be honest, heartbreak like this doesn't just fade overnight. Whether this trade ultimately helps or hurts the Mavs, one thing is certain: the fan base may never fully forgive the front office for this move. And then there's the other side of this deal, the secrecy. How did this trade stay under wraps? For so long, that's where Carmelo Anthony comes in. NBA trades usually come with weeks of leaks, speculation, and reporters dropping hints left and right, but this one nobody saw it coming, and for Carmelo Anthony, that's exactly what made it so impressive. In a recent interview, Melo praised the way the deal was handled behind the scenes. I think the way that it transpired was super dope in context. Okay, of the secrecy, nobody knew, keeping this between Mano. Why Mano? If this gets out, it's over with. Like, that had to be like, that's real trust that you had to have. Melo's perspective is interesting. While most people are focusing on the shock of the trade itself, he's pointing out just how rare it is for something of this magnitude to be pulled off without even a hint of a leak. Think about it. This is Luka Doncic. We're talking about one of the biggest stars in the game, the kind of name that never gets moved without the rumor mill going into overdrive, and yet somehow the Mavericks and Lakers kept this deal completely under wraps until it was already done. We already know that the Mavs front office didn't exactly give Luka much of a heads up about this trade, and if this deal was secretly brewing for weeks while he was still suiting up for Dallas, well, that's a tough pill to swallow. Melo sees this as a sign of trust and professionalism, but from another angle it raises serious questions about transparency between teams and their franchise players. Was Luka blindsided? Did he have any say in where he landed? Or was this just a cold, calculated business move that left emotions out of the equation entirely? Either way, one thing is clear: this trade wasn't just shocking, it was orchestrated with a level of secrecy that we almost never see in today's NBA, and that might be one of the most fascinating parts of this whole saga. At this point, the Luka Doncic trade already has all the makings of an all-time NBA shocker, franchise-altering decisions, blindsided players, furious fans, and a front office making moves that nobody can quite wrap their heads around. But what if there's an even bigger game being played behind the scenes? According to the Locked On Mavericks podcast, Luka's departure might not have just been about basketball. Instead, it could be part of a much larger power move by the Mavericks' new ownership group, one that has nothing to do with winning championships and everything to do with money, influence, and of all things gambling. In a recent episode, the hosts laid out a theory that adds a whole new layer to this already chaotic trade. Their end goal is not necessarily to move the Mavericks to Las Vegas, that their goal is to just get leverage enough to legalize gambling in Texas. And this is real. We know that they want this. They have lobbyists right now going in front of the Texas legislature trying to get gambling legalized in Texas, because you know how much Texans love sports. Now this is where things get wild. For those who don't know, the Adelson family, the new majority owners of the Mavericks, aren't just some random billionaires who love basketball. They're one of the most powerful families in the casino and gambling industry, with deep roots in Las Vegas and an obsessive interest in pushing sports betting into new markets. And according to this theory, the Luka Doncic trade isn't just about rebuilding the Mavericks, it's about using the team as leverage to push for gambling legalization in Texas, one of the biggest, most lucrative untapped markets in the country. Think about it, Texas is one of the few remaining states without legalized sports betting. The Adelsons have a long history of lobbying for gambling expansion in places where it's not yet allowed. Owning an NBA franchise, especially one with the star power of Luka Doncic, gives them a massive bargaining chip to use in political negotiations. Now imagine this. By making a high-profile, shocking trade, the Adelsons shift attention away from their long-term business moves and stir up just enough controversy to get people talking about the team, just as they're working behind the scenes to push gambling legislation in Texas. Coincidence? Maybe, but here's the kicker. If this is true, what does it mean for the long-term future of the Mavericks? Because if the real priority isn't basketball, if Luka Doncic's departure is just part of some high-stakes political play, then what does that say about where this franchise is actually headed? Will the Mavericks still be built for long-term success? Or are they now just a pawn in a much larger business strategy? Fans have every right to be concerned, and this theory, whether true or not, only adds more uncertainty to an already mind-boggling situation. The Luka trade was already historic, but if this really was about gambling, business, power plays, and something much bigger than basketball, then we might be looking at one of the most complex and controversial trades in NBA history, one that we may not fully understand for years to come, and that might be the most unsettling part of all. Thanks for watching, and subscribe my channel.